All right, welcome everyone. We will get started in just a moment. Hope everyone's doing well. All right, we'll give it just one more minute for a couple more people to join, and then we'll kick off the webinar. Thanks for being here today. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to you all to the first day of AI Virginia's Resiliency Week, presented by AI Virginia's Outreach Advisory Council. My name is Delaney Ogden. I'm the Director of Education for AI Virginia, and I am the host helping with presenting the webinar today. A few housekeeping details before we get started. We will have the chat feature available to you, so please feel free to use this and engage with others that are on the webinar today. Maybe put your name in the chat, where you're calling in from, and yeah, introduce yourself to everyone. We will also have a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation today, so please feel free to use this tool if you have any questions for our presenter towards the end. If you have any connection challenges, please remember to remain on Zoom, because Zoom will try its best to get you reconnected automatically. And in addition, for optimum bandwidth, it's best to close out any background programs and apps. I'll be sending out a survey after this session, and we would love your feedback. So please let us know what you thought about this session today. The session has been submitted for AICS approval, and the credits will be reported within 10 business days. And we'll have a discussion, as I mentioned, with a Q&A period after the presentation. Now I'd like to turn over to Chris Warren, and he'll give you a few comments before we kick off. Chris?
Howdy, and welcome to AI Virginia's 2025 Resiliency Week Speaker Series. Resiliency Week is an initiative designed to delve into the many ways that individuals, communities, and industries are working together to strengthen our collective ability to adapt and thrive in the face of today's growing environmental challenges. Throughout this impactful week, we will spotlight 4 dynamic speakers who will share their unique perspectives, innovative strategies, and real-world solutions for building a more resilient, sustainable future. From architecture and urban planning to public policy and even farming, these thought leaders will offer valuable insights into how resilience can be thoughtfully woven into the fabric of our daily lives and long-term planning. So we invite you to be part of the conversation, expand your thinking, and leave equipped with the ideas and tools to help create a stronger, more resiliency world, starting right here in your own community. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jory to introduce our speaker.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Joy Erdman. I'm part of the Outreach Advisory Council, and I'm pleased to be able to welcome our speaker today, Eve Zentezi. She's a senior architect with Clark Nexen, with over 25 years of experience in K through 12 higher education, public, and cultural projects that have received state, regional, and national AIA awards. And she is part of the Asheville office of Clark Nexen. Welcome, Eve, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all hosting. Let's see, I'm trying to share my screen here. All right, can you all see that?
Yep, we can see it great.
Great. Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting a case study of a school project that we did in Western North Carolina. And sort of take you through the history of the project, of why the owner engaged us in the first place, and then taking you through our design process and then through Hurricane Helene and showing you how it, responded. So get going here. So won't read through those. So I'm with Clark Nexen. We're a architecture and engineering firm, and we're in many states. We have 300 plus employees. We're mostly in the East, Southeast, and you can see we have many different disciplines within our. So resilience. So we'll be talking about the resilience in this case study and the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. We are also talking about the resiliency of the school system that we are working with and their ability to be adaptable, able to adjust to new conditions, and able to be modified for new use or purpose. So as far as the school is concerned, just talking to the teachers and the principal and all of the various players and just ways that they have to be adaptable every day in the classroom, right? So they have everything from technological integration to data privacy, security issues. I'm just picking some out of this list. Resource constraints that they may have, community and parental engagement, and then going all the way down the list to environmental sustainability and crisis management, pandemics and natural disasters. And then resilience, and how do we deal with a warming planet, extreme weather conditions that we're faced with, and the increasing frequency and intensity of weather events. So you can turn on the news every day and you'll see these events are happening all over the country. Heat waves, droughts, wildfires, rising sea levels, storm surge, and what we'll be discussing today, hurricanes and floods. So adapting to be more resilient, and who in the community, who are these key decision makers who help us prepare for these events? And it's just about everybody. It's a whole team effort. The federal government, right on down to households and individuals. We're all affected by this, and we all have a part to play. This is from the Resilient Design Institute, some of the resilient design principles that we incorporate into our projects. Resilience transcends scales, everything from, a small portion of a site to an entire ecosystem. This is a great resource online. They have principles and strategies. And this is a study by the Pew Charitable Trust that came out in 2017, just talking about how many schools are affected by flooding in this country. And it's a lot. So this shows flood risk scores for schools around the country. So the darker color means they're at higher risk, and then the white areas, they don't have the information yet. So you can see that just about everybody is affected by this, and some of these charts show the number of students that are affected flood zones. So this chart shows this area, the number of schools in the flood zone. This area, they do not have information yet, this percentage. But it's basically 3.5 million kids in this country in 2017 were in a flood zone. And this shows how many schools by location, what percentage of schools are in a flood zone. So that's the dark number here. So South Atlantic, which is where we are in North Carolina, and 5.3% of schools are located in a flood zone. But then another 20.3 are in the zip of a flood zone. So if there's a flood event, they would still be affected by it, even though they may not be directly in the flood zone. And this shows the annual number of billion-dollar disasters and how they've been increasing over the years. So the last year that we have on this is 2023, and you can see how the storms are increasing in number. And then this is the annual cost of these disasters. So these are billion-dollar disasters that are on this chart. So this is a high one here, 2017, where we had Hurricane Harvey and Irma, and 2024, where we had Milton. And it's not on the chart yet, but I imagine this will be a pretty high cost as well. And then this just shows where the billion-dollar weather disasters are and how everyone is affected. So flood mitigation, these photos were taken in our area. These were up in the mountains, up in Boone, after Helene came through. But basically just flood mitigation, technical strategies, and philosophical principles. So some of the technical strategies, that, build above the flood level and install sewer systems with deep drainage, retaining walls, use flood-resistant materials, elevated roads and bridges, flood control infrastructure, foundation vents, sump pumps, and then zoning and building codes, and then permanent relocation in some instances. And then philosophical principles, preparedness, resources, values, ethics, empathy, logic, and purpose. This is just showing in our area that we have different areas where we have different types of events happening in different regions, but it's a whole host of different types of geography. So here's our case study. So I was the design lead and project architect for this school project, which is currently under construction right now. It's Valley Cruces School in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina. It's a pre-K through 8th grade replacement school. And this shows you our design team. You can see some of the kids from the school here at the groundbreaking. And Valley Cruces is in the mountains of Western North Carolina. It's in Watauga County. And Valley Cruces is basically, it's a valley. It's a valley and it's surrounded by steep terrain. So there's a river that runs through the valley here, and there's one main road that runs through here. So if there's any sort of rain event, all of that rain drains down from the mountains into this valley, into the river. So it's a pretty narrow valley. And this shows you Valley Cruces. Here's the Watauga River. Here's the main road, Broadstone. This is the existing school here. So the existing school was built in 1937 at 66,000 square feet, and it has 342 students. And it serves a pretty large district, being in a rural community. They bus in kids from quite a wide area. So here it is. And you can see the flooding that it has here. These photos were taken in 2019. So since it was built, it has always been prone to flooding. The Watauga River does flood on a regular basis. So you can see here, I'll use this parking lot as kind of a benchmark throughout the presentation, but here's the bus parking lot. This is just typical flooding that they have several times a year. You can see it, floods over over the roads here. So that was the main reason that they engaged us to design a new school for them. So many years of flooding, they had lost portions of the footprint of the school that were no longer usable, or they were out constantly having to move kids out of those areas. Um, so we thought about, or once they engaged us, we talked a lot about where the new school would be and possible sites in the area. So the goals, like I said earlier, some of the resilience goals are listed here. And then some of the new school goals was they wanted to have a larger school to accommodate more students that would accommodate growth. Community engagement is an important connection to the environment. Of course, they wanted to avoid flooding and they wanted flexible spaces. So I guess a lot of you probably who are working on schools, they want more flexible spaces, particularly after the pandemic. They're interested in outdoor classrooms. We get that a lot now. They wanted to use the site in a way that promotes learning and have a connection to the existing Valley Cruces Park, some of the ideas that they had. So once they engaged us and we had some discussions about their goals, we spent a couple of years with them on site selection and looked all over the valley. And it's really difficult, right? Because most of the good land is taken now. It's some of it that's owned by the county or the school board wasn't necessarily the best, most suitable land for a new school. And it's also hard to find a site that's large enough to accommodate a new school. So we looked at several sites with them and we did site surveys, fits on them. We had geotechnical engineers looking at the soil. Utilities were an issue. We had to drill test wells, test them, and then look at the feasibility and the cost. And then once they went through all the first steps and got a check mark, we would go on to the next one. So just evaluating the floodplain issues on the various sites. And then there are a lot of wetlands in the area as well. And archaeology, we did an archaeological study of the site as well. So after all of that, we ended up right down the street. So here we are. This is our new site. For some of you who are familiar with the area, the Mass General Store Annex is right here. Um, and we're very close, and we have some very similar situations that they have at the existing property. It's absolutely beautiful, though. I mean, it's a stunning site. So this is looking to the east, and Broadstone Road is over here. And then the Watauga River runs along through here. And we have this wetland that bisects our site. And then it kind of pops up over here in this area and over here. And when we get to the floor plans, this will be on plan south, just so you can orient yourselves. So here we are. Here's Valley Cruces Park. And so one of the things they want to do with our new site is have a future greenway here, looking at getting easement through the neighboring property so that they can have a pedestrian connection to the park. So these are some of our inspiration slides. This is the actual wetland site, and then this is the river on our site here and the future river walk along here. So this is our flood map. You can see what's going on here in this. So this hatch here is the floodway, and that's where we're not able to build any permanent structures. And then the blue part is a 100-year floodplain, and the orange is the 500-year floodplain. So you can see on our site that it's a little bit of an improvement, but it's not a lot of an improvement. And so that was pretty challenging dealing with some of these, the high floodplain. So here we are. So this is a section of our site. So Broadstone Road here at the high point, and then down here it slopes towards the Watauga River here. So the 100-year floodplain, our base flood elevation on the site is 2675, and you're required in Watauga County to go 2 feet above the flood elevation. And we went 4 feet instead of 2 feet, just because of trying to find kind of a suites with the elevations on site and how much fill we wanted to bring in. We wanted to have a little bit of a safety factor, just given what we knew about the history of the site and the flooding. But there were some other considerations too. I mean, it would be really great to go even higher than that, but because it's in a historic district, we were limited to the height that we could have with our building, and so there were massing restrictions. So we ended up 4 feet above the floodplain. So here's our site. Watauga River back here and Broadstone Road here. So these are some of the site challenges, the wetland areas that I mentioned earlier. And then here's our floodplain information. So we were really limited to this corner of the site as far as trying to do something that was cost effective. We raised this entire site 4 feet all the way around here in order to do that. And we had to place the building on rigid inclusions because of the soil quality. So we also did not have any municipal water service on the site. So here's our well and the 100-foot easement that we put in place. And then we needed a fire sprinkler tank as well. So without the municipal water service, you'll see that it looks like a silo on the project, and that's our tank that's devoted specifically it's just the sprinkler tank. And then there's no municipal sewer service either. So we have a septic field, and all of the major components of the sewage septic field, all of the equipment and major components are 2 feet above the floodplain. And they're built in such a way that if there is a flood event, then the force main check valve on the system shuts down. We also had, because we're restricted to this corner of the site, we had to bring in vehicular bridges to cross the wetlands. We left the wetlands intact. That's the philosophy of the county. And so the wetlands actually come under the bridge that we added and under the building in sections. So a portion of the building here is suspended over the wetland from the structure above. They also wanted outdoor spaces adjacent to the schools. So we have a series of retaining walls, and these yellow areas are outdoor learning areas. We have a green roof here that is also an outdoor classroom for the older kids. And then all of these little nooks and crannies, we have all these outdoor classrooms. There's a courtyard here by the main door. And then we also have a outdoor dining at the cafeteria and rainwater collection and a garden for the kids to plant vegetables and things. So when we drop in the circulation, you can see there's a queuing area here, and then the cars come in and there's a drop off. The buses peel off here and go across this bridge, and then the bus drop off is over here on this side. And then you can see this under construction right now. And then I mentioned earlier, we're in a historic district. So these are some buildings in the area and some of the buildings we are looking to for inspiration and materials. So this is our material palette for the project, wood, stone. We use a lot of river rock around the building and around the site, standing seam and wood siding and stone siding. So here's a picture of the building from the street. So this shows the what we call the meadow at the front of the project. So we have a lot of planting in this project. These are some of the we worked with Sitework Studios, and these are some of the plants that they selected for the project. So we have the meadow plants, and then we have trees, and we have, because of the historic district and just the county guidelines, we have to have a lot of buffer zones. So these are the low maintenance, poor soil tolerant plants, and then wetland plants, and then some other landscape plants. This shows a floor plan. So we have a 2-story academic wing here, and then we have the cafeteria out here, and the gym administration wing here. The drop-off is here, so this is the main door that's used with the security vestibule. We have the media center here, and then support spaces over here. And anything in red is kind of a flexible space. We do because we built more space into more square footage into this to accommodate growth. A lot of these classrooms right now are not a lot, but a few are flexible. Um, and then this is the second floor. So this is our green roof over here, and then some band and CTE class, and then the rest of the classrooms over here. So here we are under construction. So the wood that we're using is acetylated wood, and we for its low maintenance and durability, so it can be survive in standing water. And here's our sprinkler tank over here, and then we have you can see over here our green roof and some of the stone siding. So the existing original portion of the school has stone siding, so we tried to take that stone pattern and color of the stone to kind of resemble that. You can see retaining walls here, and these are some of the outdoor classroom spaces here and then around the building. There's a pedestrian walkway that crosses over to the field on the other side there. So there's so it's under construction right now. So these were taken a few months ago. So we're a little bit further, well, a lot further along than this right now at the moment. But just to give you an idea, this is one of the vehicular bridges. So in order to preserve the wetland, they built the abutments around it. We're not allowed to touch the wetlands at all during construction. I mean, so it's been challenging in just the construction. And so what they did in this case was they built, this is taken from a camera off the roof of the building. They built the bridge on site, and then they took a crane and they swung it into place and then lowered it down and lowered it down. And we were really excited when it fit. So, I mean, it was a very exciting day. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. Here's another view. And here's a view of what will be an outdoor classroom area here at the front facing the street. And then this is the east side. This is the media center. There's a lot of glazing in this project, and which is, you know, always something talking about security in a school project and the amount of glazing. So they were happy with that. It was really important for them to have a lot of natural light. So there is quite a bit of glazing. Some of these, the cladding is in process. So any of this horizontal bats that you see are in areas where the acetylated wood just hasn't been installed yet. So again, there's a classroom kind of tucked back in here, an outdoor classroom. And then this is the cafeteria and the neighbor. So you can see how they kind of have a dialogue with one another with the cladding. And then this is taken from the parking lot side. We have a rainwater collection and cistern right here, and the gardens, and then there's the pedestrian walk that comes out here. And this is down from the field, so looking back up at the building at the cafeteria. This is where the wetland goes under the bridge and under the building. And here's that bridge at that wetland. And this will have a wood deck on it for outdoor dining. Here's our rainwater collection cistern. This is where the planter boxes will be. And again, showing the wetland. So that's the front door. This is when you walk in the building after you come through the security vestibule, the media center. Here, again, more natural materials. We use a lot of wood in the project. We have glue lambs and structural wood deck and a wood screen that becomes a part of the guardrail system. This is not a wood curtain wall. It's aluminum. And then this is looking at that little right at the front door. So it'll have a tree. This will be an area where kids can hang out when they're waiting for their parents to come and pick them up. And this is a view from the cafeteria showing the garden. So this is the gym under construction. And this on the right is the gym, also a little corner. And then this is an outdoor classroom area by the media center. It'll be an outdoor reading space. Oh, one other thing, you can sort of see the columns for all of these canopies are downspouts. One is structural and the other is a downspout. And then this is from the second floor, just looking at in two directions, looking to the north towards the cafeteria and looking towards the south towards the street. So, so then how does this all work with the hurricane? So Hurricane Helene came in last year in September, and it came in Florida and then went through South Carolina into North Carolina and then into Virginia on September 27th. And this is showing some of the rainfall totals that we had in our area. So it was a lot. It was 8 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches. And this is just showing the event. So Boone is close to us. It's about a 20-minute drive from Valley Cruces. This had 16 inches of rain. And that was the storm itself, the hurricane. It was a tropical storm when it hit us. But it also included the 2 days of rain that we had right before the hurricane. And this is the river gauge of the Watauga River in Valley Cruces. So typically it's down here, but the principal of the school, Dr. Bonnie Smith, she checks this every single morning at their existing school to see how high the river is because it gets into the red zone quite a bit, which is at 16 feet. And anytime she sees it kind of getting close, she knows they're going to have to come up with a plan for that day or week. But during Helene, it went up to 27 feet and broke. So we don't even know how high it went, but it was pretty serious. And then this shows the wind during the hurricane. So these are some of the images, right, that we all saw in the news. This is Florida, Big Bend, Florida. This is in South Carolina after the storm, debris collection site. And then this is I-40 in North Carolina between us and Tennessee, and it still looks like this along large stretches of it. This is Marshall, a town really close to Asheville. So this is right up the street from us. And it was devastated. And then this is Lake Lure. So the town of Chimney Rock was swept into the Lake Lure. And they're currently rebuilding the town of Chimney Rock. This is Boone, the day after the storm. And you can see the parking lots there. And then this is Valley Cruces. So this area called the Pumpkin Patch, and it's where everybody was gathering during the storm. It was the only place where they could get cell service, but you can see that water was creeping in. And then these are some of the buildings and the water coming all the way up to Broadstone Road. This is the Mass General Store annex that I mentioned earlier between the existing school and our school. And this building just kind of floated down from no one knows where. Well, the owner of this probably knows where it came from, but anyway, it's not supposed to be there. It's not typically there. And then this is the existing school during the storm. So Dr. Smith was there. She took these photos and she went there with some maintenance people during the storm just to, because she's used to the water coming in and moving things. So she thought she could move the furniture up and, try to save areas that maybe if they hadn't moved it up enough, basically. So she watched it come in. So here's that parking lot I mentioned earlier with the buses, and this is how high the water was in that parking lot, and it doesn't usually get up that high. And this is the school after. You can see the watermark here, and this is the gym floor. So the gym floor buckled in these big ribs, and it's actually up chest high. So these buckles are 5 feet high. It's incredible. And then this is the new school. So basically the water, it did what it wanted, what we designed it to do. And that's why we got to kind of test this out in real time to see if some of these strategies worked. So what happened was the water came up from the river and it came right up to our 4-foot line where we had raised the site, and it came the water came up and under the building in the wetlands and up here. It didn't come in this area. The wetland filled not from the river, but from water that was just coming down the mountain. The curb and gutter were not in place yet, so there was some water that came through here and went under the bridge, and there was some water that came down here into our courtyard, and it filled the courtyard because the drainage wasn't in place here either. So a little bit of water did get into our building. Just it was about an inch, and it was not the muddy river water. It was slightly less muddy. That was actually pretty clear water from the mountain. So we did have to remove 18 inches of gypboard at that time, in the week following the storm, and all the insulation, and replace it. But that was the only damage that was done, and it was the water infiltration was just a portion of this wing here coming from up there. So these are some of the photos from the next day. A neighbor sent up a drone. So after that, just talking about adaptability by the school and resiliency by the school, they had to abandon their school, basically. It was so damaged. So they have 342 students that had to be accommodated somewhere. So Appalachian State University, Caldwell Community College, and Valley Crisis Conference Center opened up their doors and offered their spaces to the school. So they've been operating on 3 separate campuses since Helene. The principal basically goes from campus to campus every day. I mean, just thinking about the logistics of food service, they have to pack everything up and distribute it to these 3 different campuses every day. So it's been really challenging for them. So our new school is under construction. It's not complete. So the goal is to have it complete so they can start next year in the new school. It'll be completed in the summer of 2025, so fairly soon. And this is their existing school. Just they asked us to take a look at it. What to do with the existing school. The day after the storm, they were told by a local inspector that they could not inhabit it at all. They were given an hour to remove what they could, and they're not supposed to be in there anymore. So there are some different thoughts. So this is just showing which portion of the building was damaged during the storm. And it's all beneath base flood elevation. So there's talk about demolishing this possibly and renovating this portion of the building, turning it into something else that could be used by another entity or possibly for early childhood development. But it's really just ongoing discussions. They're also looking at different areas around this site. This is also owned by the county, so maybe they could develop a portion of this. Maybe they demolish all of it over now that they know how the site responds to a major flood event, and they can plan for that. Or do they just abandon it and give it to the park? That's another item that's being discussed. So anyway, that's our project. Are there any questions?
Oh, wow, this is great, Eve. Thank you so much. We do have quite a few questions coming up in the Q&A, but we're going to first start with I get to moderator's privilege. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I have. The first one is
Okay.
how Clark Nexon, or if you have a perspective on this, how Clark Nexon as a company is beginning to incorporate resilience thinking more broadly. Obviously, on this project, you're doing a lot of stuff, and each project is going to have its own thing. But how are they? Because one of the arguments people have against dealing with resilience issues and projects is the added cost due to added time and the expertise needed to do those kinds of things.
So, I mean, it is something that we're confronted with on a lot of projects, particularly from the Asheville office in our area. well, actually from all of our office, from our coastal offices as well. So just right after, just as an example, right after Helene, we went to an interview with another school system in the area. And again, the site was in a floodplain. So it's a question, and just we did a quick analysis, just a take of how high they would need to raise and some measures that would be required. But it's always it's, it is more expensive, but there wasn't any other land available in the area. So I think that's really the main challenge that we're having right now is that there aren't a lot of other options. So it is an expensive endeavor. And if there are other sites that would be more suitable, definitely. I mean, that would be uh, the preferred option. But at this point, I think that they're just limited sites, so it's something that that we have to deal with.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Um,
mhm.
well, I have some more questions, but I think there's some good questions in the Q&A, and I'm happy to read those to you, or you can read them yourself. I think, Eve, you probably have access to it, but
Oh, let's see. I'll stop sharing. Let me see if I can go to the chat here.
it's in the Q&A.
Oh, here we go. Let's see. How much of the design assumes the site building will flood periodically, and how much try to keep the water out of the building? So yeah, so we designed for the worst case scenario, we thought, and it was worse than we even thought, right? So yeah, so that was yeah, I mean we felt like it was successful, but it would have been nice to go just a little bit higher in our worst case scenario. And then what's going to happen in the future? Um, Hopefully this was a 500-year storm is what they're saying. So hopefully we won't see that again, that level, that extent of flooding in 500 years, but we'll see flooding probably every year uh, to a lesser degree. I think it'll be okay for those types of events. It's just these really big ones that you just never know. Also, not because not all of the systems were in place yet. I think it'll do better the next time, I hope. Yeah. So then,
Great.
were there any insurance issues um, that had to be incorporated? Um, yes. So to get the FEMA insurance, we had to do the elevation certificates and all of that. So I don't know if you guys have done that, but basically during construction, you prove that you're 2 feet above because that's what's required in Watauga County is 2 feet above base flood. So we have to submit paperwork, and then surveyors have to come out and show that you are meeting those requirements for base flood elevation and finished floor elevations for all of the equipment and for the building as we go. So that's for the insurance. Now the school is dealing with insurance company for their existing building, of course. So that's an ongoing process for them.
Great. And Chris has got some questions here for you.
Let's see. What is the overall thickness of the roof? So the roof is um, the structural wood decking, and then we have 6 inches of insulation across the board, and then the standing seam roof. And then in the areas where we have the roof deck, we have an Irma roof. Again, we have 6 inches of insulation. That's a upside down roof with adjustable um, pedestals and pavers. And then there are some areas where we have TPO, and again, we have 6 inches of insulation on that as well. Was there any discussion about moving or building new wetlands instead of building expensive bridges? Um, yes, there was a lot of discussion about that. So whenever you touch the wetlands, if you move them, it triggers a review by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it also triggers a review by SHPO. and SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. And one of the requirements they had for us if we were to disturb the wetlands, they asked us to do a investigation and a report of all of the schools in Watauga County based on their historic value. And it would have taken more time to do that study, and the escalation cost um, for the entire project to do that study would have set us back a year at least. Um, so the owner, we evaluated the escalation against moving the wetlands, and it was actually cheaper to put the bridges in. So um, that's how we ended up with that, because otherwise that probably would. The wetlands have not been designated wetlands for very long. Actually, it was kind of I don't know exactly how many years, maybe 5 or 7 years ago. So if we had moved them, the creek, that little area, the creek that goes bisects the site, I think that would have been possible, but it was actually less expensive to proceed. So let's see why the county didn't consider zoning changes that might have allowed elevated construction. I don't really know. County didn't consider zoning changes that might have allowed elevated construction. Um, so,
Hey, Eve, what
so
can
that
you read the
wasn't something,
question
uh-huh.
just so
I'm
other
just
people
trying
can hear
to
what the question
understand.
is?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm trying to understand the question. Follow-up question is why the county didn't consider zoning changes that might have allowed elevated construction. So in our area, fill is very inexpensive. So it if I'm following, if I'm understanding the question correctly, like why didn't we just elevate the building? Is that the question? Um,
Yeah, and he
instead
follows up
of
by saying it could have been on stilts like a beach house
yeah, okay,
instead of
yeah.
on fill.
So
Yeah.
that was right. Okay, so that was also a more cost effective approach to fill the site because we, dirt is not dirt is cheap, right? So that was the grounds for that. Also because of, I mean, actually, really good question because we had to use rigid inclusions anyway. So stilts and rigid inclusions, maybe I've not done a project on stilts before, but I imagine that's actually would have been an interesting solution. To do something like that. But we were also restricted by the historic district ordinance of what
Mm.
we could do. So it wasn't just the county itself, it had to do with the historic district. And we were pretty limited in what we could do massing wise. And that would have been such a different kind of architecture typology to introduce into the valley. So that wasn't something that we even brought up actually because of the historic ordinance.
So one of the follow-up questions that came in the chat that I just saw is, what are rigid inclusions?
So rigid inclusions basically are like piles.
Mm,
So
okay.
underneath every single column footing and underneath the perimeter wall, they're like friction away. They drill down until they get a certain amount of resistance that's required, and then they fill them with concrete. So it's like kind of like a cheap, inexpensive pile. We do that on almost all of our projects around here because of the soil conditions. So I've had projects in the past where you look at the rigid inclusion Revit model and it kind of looks like a hairbrush. Like so you have these
Yeah.
under the entire slab in some cases. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But they put them in fairly quickly. I mean they're done so commonly around here.
Yeah.
But
I think that's just
basically
a
it
term.
provides
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stability.
gotcha. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Chris had a question up at the top that's where he's asking if there was a special landscape or civil consultant for the plants that you all used, because it seemed you have a pretty extensive palette.
Yeah, so we worked with Sitework Studios. They're a local landscape architect, and they did a great job. I mean, one of the things we were trying to do is just to use really natural, plants that are native plants that look like, that can just kind of create these natural looking meadows and we're augmenting the wetlands significantly. It didn't really show on our renderings, but we're not allowed to plant in the wetlands, but all around the
Mhm.
wetlands, we have all of these extensions of native plants, and hopefully these will kind of flourish and they were really interested in having the kids be able to kind of have classes and study the wetlands and use them as a educational tool. So these plantings were, um, I think, hope if the deer don't eat them, I think it'll be, well,
Yeah,
yeah, I have high
seems like
hopes
you.
for them, but they do a great job.
Yeah, it seems like you had a pretty enlightened school board to work with, so that's nice. Um, on projects like these.
Oh, they were great.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were great. They were incredibly open
yeah.
to ideas.
Seems like they
So
had good ideas
yeah,
of their own too, which is great. Lamara asks, how
yeah.
large are the water collection cisterns, and how is the amount of water needed to support the garden calculated?
So I can't tell you. I'll have to um, if um, the person who asked the question can send me an email, I can give you the exact sizes of those. The cistern, it's larger than it needed to be, and it's I can't even remember how many. It's maybe 8 feet deep. Um, but there's a filtration system in there
Mm,
also. So the water's collected and then it's coming off of a standing seam roof onto TPO, so it had to be purified. And so there's a pump, and it's a pretty elaborate system actually. And then uh, from there, some hose bibs. Just to use for irrigation. It's not an irrigation system per se, it's just hose bibs. But um, yeah, but
it's
we
cool.
calculated that just with our plumbing engineer worked on that with us and our civil
Mm,
engineer as well to make sure we had enough. And then the
great.
fire tank was done with the sprinkler engineer and the civil engineer. The fire tank was a challenge because you need to have enough water to handle an event. And then we also need to be able to refill the fire tank from the well. So the well had to have the capacity to do that and pressure to do that. So
Oh, wow.
so luckily our well has a it's a good resource. So
Yeah, that's
anyway,
great. Chris asks what kind of stone you used on the exterior.
so the stone is actually adhered stone. Um, but it's a natural stone that is quarried in Tennessee, in the mountains of Tennessee, not too far away from our site. So,
That's great. I have a couple more questions. One, you mentioned that if I understand, in the septic field, even though it's in a flood
mhm.
zone, that I guess there's a shutoff valve before the water would leave the tank. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the septic system has a very large storage tank.
Okay.
So it's a combination of things. So all of the elements are 2 feet above flood, except for the trenches for that are
Mhm.
buried. And then they have a higher pitch than you typically have. And I can't tell you exactly how that helps the system, but it was something that the local authority asked for, requested, just because they wanted to make sure that that it would perform properly in a flood, and because it will flood flood regularly. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a cutoff to keep everything from backflowing into the system in a
Right.
flood event, basically. So it'll be shut down, but at the same time, the storage tank will do its job, so the school could operate during that time, that they're not actually able to distribute anything into the field. So
Right.
yeah,
I've been working on some coastal projects,
it's a
and
little
that's a huge deal.
oh, it is, yeah. And we actually taught, I don't know the name of the engineer, but we actually for this project consulted with coastal some engineers out at the coast, because they deal with all these issues and we hadn't
Yeah.
dealt with it to this extent before, so we did need some outside
Right.
expertise to help guide some of the design of some of these um,
Yeah.
pieces.
It's also a big deal because so many septic systems are of an age and they're failing
Hmm.
now. So I think especially across the southeast, they're seeing a lot of this going on.
Mhm.
Not things in architecture school you
Mhm.
learn about that much, like septic systems.
Right,
But
right.
um, one last question, and then I think we're at time. But did Clark Nexon, since the hurricane, the flooding, everything that happened, did you all help with the crisis management for the school district? Like, did you help them with the relocations and the different sites that they ended up having to operate out of?
We didn't on this project.
Mm.
I mean, because the community stepped up and immediately, um, or not immediately, but within a couple of weeks, had found them other places. What we've done really is we've gone into a number of schools that were hit, that flooded, and we've done assessments for them, and just helping them, not directly helping them with their insurance, but just helping them assess the damage, um,
Yeah,
that they
that's
took
great.
on. So,
Great. Well,
so
thank you
yeah,
so much for
we've
joining
had,
us.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in Asheville, it took us, I mean, I guess we're about 7 months since the hurricane, and it wasn't until 6 months after, so like a month ago, that the city started having, that we started having meetings and talking about rebuilding. I mean, it took us that long to really process the information and people to start kind of looking towards that. So it didn't happen right away, but there are now discussions about that, and because our the River Arts District in Asheville was devastated, and this big
Mhm.
question: what do you do? Do you rebuild there? Right? Um, so yeah, but we're just now starting to discuss that and look at
Yeah. Yeah, you're in
the
survival mode for a while longer than
for a little
people
while.
on the
Yeah.
outside would
Hmm.
realize for sure. Well, thank you so
Hmm.
much, Eve. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic. I learned a lot, and I know everyone on the call did. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We greatly appreciate it. And please be on the lookout for the other sessions that we have coming up for resiliency this week. Wednesday, we have one with Resilient Virginia. And then Thursday, Denise Nelson with DNA Advising and John Wilson on Friday, May 23rd. So please register for those sessions. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.
Thanks.